How's it going, everybody? So what I'm showing you here is a coral reef in Dauin on the southeastern tip of Negros Island in the Philippines. And this is a healthy coral reef. Now, why is this worth pointing out? So we are in a year where corals worldwide are suffering. And why is this the case? Well, as you're probably aware, we are experiencing man-made or anthropogenic climate change or global warming. So the temperatures of the planet are increasing. On top of that, we are in a year where there is a El Nino event. This is a warm weather system which originates in the central Pacific and it then moves east, and it affects a lot of the coral reefs in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and in Australia, and so on. Now, this is a problem. Why is this a problem? Because corals have these tiny algae in their tissues. They're called Symbiodinium or zooxanthellae, and they essentially produce sugars for the corals in exchange for the protection in the hard coral skeletons. Now, when temperatures get too hot, these corals also produce too much of very reactive oxygen species, free radicals. So essentially types of oxygen which can damage tissues. As a response, the corals then get rid of these algae, and then this is a harsh trade-off. So they save themselves from these oxygen radicals, but they're also missing the biological energy, the sugar which these algae are producing for them. So this is called coral bleaching. And essentially, if it's too hot, depending on the exact coral species, for a couple of weeks, the corals will lose the algae, and then if that's only a short-term thing, they can regain them. But if that persists for too long, and too long again can mean different things for different coral species. But when that persists for too long, the corals usually die, and what's left are these whitish, ghost white coral skeletons. Now, we don't have that here, fortunately, in Dauin. Why is that the case? Now, why are we relatively safe here? Let's look at a few things. Now, the NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration of the US, which is an excellent scientific organization, they have published this coral heat map, essentially. So, it's the accumulated heat over days and weeks, and the redder this map is, the more dangerous the situation is for coral bleaching. Now, so already on this global scale, we can see that the Philippines, as of April, are not yet affected. So, April here really is early summer. So this could still change. Obviously, I hope it doesn't. Now, we can look at more things, and we can look at maps generated by a very nice app, which is called Windy. And we can see two things. So first of all, we can see the currents which affect the area where we are. And again, this is the southern tip, the southeastern tip of Negros Island. We can see that there's a very strong current coming here from the east. So this is coming from the direction of the island of Bohol. Hence the name of this current is the Bohol jet. And this current has the very beneficial effect that it brings colder water to the shores of the east coast of Negros. And we can also see that in this map generated essentially by satellite data and some extrapolation by Windy. So the temperature here in Dauin and along the coastline is about 27 degrees, which is below the threshold of coral bleaching. So we are safe because locally, as of now, because of this beneficial Bohol jet. Why does the Bohol jet bring colder water? Well, we can look at a map generated by another app, and this is Navionics. All of this is in the base version for free to use. So these are really great resources. They're not sponsoring me, but I look at these apps frequently, and they're great, right? I can recommend that you play with them. So we can see with navionics that the ocean coming from Bohol towards Negros is very deep, so up to about 1,800 meters. So obviously deeper oceans mean colder waters, and there will always be some mixing when the water moves along. So my impression is that the whole jet passing over this very deep water cools the east coast of Negros. A few years ago, we had a bleaching event on the west coast of Negros, in the Negros Occidental province, but not on the east coast where we are. So the conclusion is that because of very beneficial local conditions, and together probably paired with the fact that, we're still in the early summer, we are not experiencing any coral bleaching yet. In contrast to the Great Barrier Reef, where I have seen really terrible news and, terrible pictures of large coral areas which were completely white. And I've also read reports about bleaching in the Caribbean. So, then the question is all good, right? Can we relax here? Well, no, right? So first of all, we have to hope that the situation persists like this. Number two, so this is really probably akin to, the Black Plague in Europe in the Middle Ages, where this terrible disease killed about a third of the European population in the 1300s. Now, when that happened, there were some villages where, which were more isolated and where, the Black Plague, which is, of course, transmitted by the fleas of rats, where the Black Plague just didn't make it to these villages. So even during a terrible catastrophe, you will have local factors, and you will have some areas which are affected worse, and you will have some areas which are affected less bad. So, I just wanted to give an update, and I decided to just essentially film the reef today because of all of the terrible news from other parts I've read. And I hope this was interesting to you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. There is also a really cool book out, which also covers, among other things, coral bleaching. And the people who wrote that book are myself, but particularly my friend, Dr. James Reimer from the University of the Syracuse, who is actually an expert on corals and on coral bleaching. So check it out and see you soon.